Greetings, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and welcome back to another video. Long time no see for me, not for you. I've been regular for you, but I haven't filmed a video in several weeks now because, as you can see, I'm in a different location. I am in my childhood bedroom on the other side of the world right now. I flew back to Auckland, New Zealand at the end of November, and I've just been kind of here seeing family, catching up, spending time with my dog Biscuit, who does not want to be in the room right now, otherwise I would show him to you. Instead, I'll put a little photo or video up on the screen just because I literally can't go 5 seconds without talking about him, so here you go. Today, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So a few weeks ago, I made a video about landlords on TikTok, and I asked you all to send me your stories about some horrible landlord experiences that you have had, and you delivered. I got so many emails. And I read through most of them, and my god, landlords, man. Oh my god. So I wanted to sit down and we're just going to read through some of your landlord stories, and I'm going to give my input, and we're just going to have a conversation about landlords because fuck landlords, you know? If you want a part 2 of this, please leave a like and let me know, because there are so many more emails that I could go through and include, so I can absolutely do a part 2 with just the emails that I have. And also, I wanted to do this more often because I had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope that you all enjoy this video, but I thought that it would be fun if I started doing, you know, instead of going through Reddits and Instagrams and Twitter, etc., I thought that I would start giving like little prompts and have you all email me stories along those prompts, because it feels a bit more personal, you know? I have a bit of fun doing it. It means you get to share whatever. It's fun for all of us, you know? So the next one of these that I thought I would do is like bad first dates. So if you want to send me your bad first date Tinder nightmare type stories, then please email me at dearkiwi@gmail.com, and it is kiwi with a Q. I'll put it up on the screen. Send me your bad first date stories. I would love to read them and share with the class, you know? Before we get into it properly, I would like to take a moment to say thank you to today's patron of the day, Anoli Like Cannoli. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for all of your support. If anyone else would like to become a patron, you go to patreon.com/savvycat or click the top link in the description. It starts as little as £1 a month, and I appreciate it greatly. So yeah, thank you. And let's get on with the horror stories. When I'd first moved into the apartment complex I lived in Westminster, Colorado from 2007 to 2012, there was a flat pet fee of $15 for cats. It was more for dogs, but I didn't have a dog. That was $15 total for my 2 boys, Keepsy and Peter. However, for my last year or so there, when lease renewal time came up and the complex was under new ownership, they jacked up the pet fee to $30 per cat. And they did it to me because it wouldn't be fair to any new tenants that they would pay more in pet fees than they would be. Moving back in with my dad was not an option, as my aunt and grandmother occupied what had been my room. My aunt has some landlord horror stories of her own, and I'm sending her this email in case she's interested. And pretty much every apartment I could have moved to and still had a reasonable travel time to work either charged even more for pets or just didn't allow them outright. So while I did try to eat the $60 a month, it was just too much, and I ended up having to give them away. The somewhat happy postscript to the story is that the boys did get adopted, though not together. The shelter I took them to had told me up front that while they would try to have them adopted together, they couldn't promise anything. That's so devastating. That's so sad. I think in general, pet fees are so silly. Like, having to pay extra for a pet is just kind of ridiculous and doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. Like, yeah, I know they can potentially do damage, but then just charge for the damage they've caused. That's what the security deposit is for, right? Like, if your cat scratches up the carpet and ruins the carpet, you just have to pay to get carpet removed. If like, you know what I mean? Like, pet fees in general are just like really upsetting, and I don't quite understand why they're there, because it makes really no difference at all. Like, you're not going to charge someone a child fee. Imagine you charge a family, like, extra for every kid they have. The parents move in to a place and they give birth and have a baby, and suddenly their rent goes up by, like, $100 a month because they have a baby and they have to be charged a baby fee. Like, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Especially when you went in with, like, a relatively reasonable fee, as reasonable as pet fees can be, of $15 total for 2 cats. And then they, like, quadrupled it. That's wild. And, like, People always like to say, like, it's so detached, and it shows, especially with, like, landlords, how little they care nor empathize with people. Of, like, a lot of people look at $60 and they're like, it's just $60. It's just $60. Get over it. It's like $60 is a lot of money for a lot of people. You know, it's like people will be like, just don't buy a coffee every day. A lot of people don't buy a coffee every day. And also, you shouldn't have to stop buying a coffee every day just so you can keep your cats that you've had for, like, several years, because they're your family members and you shouldn't have to pay $60 a month just to be able to keep them. I'm glad that they found new homes, but I'm so sorry that this happened. It must have been really distressing for the cats to have to be rehomed. It must have been so upsetting and distressing for you as well. Like, can places just let people have pets and, like, not charge extra? Because it's just ridiculous and it's greedy and there's no point to it at all. This is titled Nightmare Landlord Who Slept in the Living Room. So we're off to a fun start without even getting into it. Oh my god. Not necessarily a bad person, but was awful living there. Haha. For context, I'm a uni student and was homeless for a little while before finding this place, so I was quite desperate and can't complain. You absolutely can still complain. Like, you can definitely still complain. Because you shouldn't have been in a position that made you homeless in the first place. Like, that shouldn't happen. So you are absolutely allowed to complain. It was a tiny 2-bedroom flat that was rented out to students, but only girls, because men are too strong and might break something, and usually foreign girls coming from abroad for the first time to study. That is the biggest, loudest, screaming red flag I've ever seen. Oh my god. Only girls, students, so only young girls are allowed to live here because boys are too strong and might break things. That also very heavily just implies the opposite of, like, girls are weak and complacent, which is a horrifying thing for a landlord to say when looking for tenants, especially when they're living in the living room. However, the landlord was a 74-year-old man, slept on the bed in the living room, which was connected to the kitchen. So every time you wanted to go make food, get water, do dishes, put the washing on, etc., he's there at all times of day because he would never leave the house. Oh my god, that's horrible. Truly, truly horrible. Wouldn't be too bad if he wasn't so damn chatty. He'd talk about literally everything, and you couldn't get a word in edgewise, nor escape to the privacy of your room before waiting for him to finish talking. He'd always make odd comments about the other girls who'd lived there, about their weight, eating habits, clothing choices, etc., etc. That made me uncomfy, plus a few off-color jokes occasionally. Oh my god. This is a nightmare. Holy shit. Oh, fucking, okay. Rent was £700, but £600 if you pay in cash. Really sketchy if you ask me. Yes, incredibly sketchy. And there was no contract whatsoever. Fucking hell. This is like nightmare scenario. Oh my god. I lived there for a full year before moving out, but most of the other girls who stayed whilst I was there barely lasted a few months before escaping. He'd constantly threatened to kick me and the others out if we ever did the slightest thing he didn't like, so it was like walking on eggshells, lol. So glad I don't live there anymore. Me and my girlfriend now live together and it's so much better because I can cook in the kitchen without anxiety. Oh my good lord. That is so horrifying and fucked up on so many levels. Like, it's so taking advantage of young women, especially foreign young women, obviously. Like, the fact that there's no legally binding contract is horrifying because there's nothing you can do in any situation. Like, you know, there's very, very little you can do. It means he can kick you out. He can just, like, there's no regulations about how the property has to be kept. There's nothing that's stopping him from charging you more or from, like, just kicking you out on the street with no reason. And then on the fact that he is commenting on people's bodies and their clothes and their eating, and he's not leaving and will, like, make you not do things that he doesn't personally like while you're in. That's really, really, really sketchy and fucked up. And charging you in cash too, so he doesn't have to pay taxes and whatever. Like, oh my god. It's that thing of, like you say, like, you know, you said you can't complain, which you absolutely can complain. You have every right in the world to complain because this is horrifying. And he is a bad person, straight up. Like, I don't know what he's up to, but, like, the potential of him having done, doing, or in the future doing, like, bad things and harming these women are very, very, very high. Ugh. I'm glad you were able to get off the street. That's the thing, right? Is they take full advantage of that. They take advantage of the fact that people are desperate. People need somewhere to live. And 600, 700 pounds, that's a lot of money. Like, that's so much money to live in this situation. That's so much money regardless. Like, obviously it's like not that expensive for the area potentially, but it's a lot of money in general and especially for that situation. And I'm so glad you got out, but I can't believe you had to live like that for a whole year before you were able to do so. That's horrifying. This man should go to jail. Like, I don't really know how much of what he's doing is legal or not. I feel like it's not really illegal, but it feels very illegal. I feel like if you're gonna be a landlord and having young women live in your house and pay you money, like, there has to be a contract for that. I'm pretty sure. I feel like there has to be a legal contract for that. I don't think it's illegal what he's doing. But I also know that the law probably doesn't give a fuck. There's probably nothing you could do anyway. But holy shit. I hope that all the girls have gotten out and he is not doing this anymore, and I hope he suffers in his old age, because what the fuck? Oh my god, men are gross. Young women only, and I'm gonna be on the couch at all times and comment on how you look and present you. Vile. Horrible man. I'm glad you got out and you're happy and you can cook in your kitchen and have fun with your girlfriend. That's brilliant. I'm happy for you. So glad. This is a Texas landlord story. I wanted to share a story about my sister. She lives in Austin, Texas, and in mid-August, the hottest month of the year usually, her AC went out for days. The temperature outside was 90 to 97 degrees the entire week. Actually, I don't know how hot that is. Let me search that up. It sounds very hot. 30 to 36 degrees, that is very hot. Not enjoyable, not pleasant at all. I hope at the very least that it is a dry heat. Her animals were constantly panting and had to have nearby family buy them a $500 window AC unit because the heat was getting to dangerous levels indoors. Their landlord didn't have a nearby office or even a phone number to call to report anything, so they just had to do some online report bullshit. The landlord then just sent 2 different people to come assess what was wrong with their AC, but neither of them had anything to fix it. They leave and get no date on when they'll come back to fix it. After 5 days, my sister got a relative to send a threat of legal action if the AC wasn't fixed before 7 days. The morning after that threat, repairmen were at their door to fix it. 30 to 35 degrees Celsius sucks with no AC. It really fucking does. London has been getting that hot in recent years, and there is no AC really in those buildings, and it is insufferable. You cannot breathe. You choke on the air. It is so hot without that. So I feel for her so deeply. And the fact that, you know, the unit comes with AC, like, that's meant to work, and assuming it's like regulation that, you know, it's up to the landlord to fix that, and that's something that you have to have going because it's hot and it's dangerous. And the fact that landlords have the audacity so often to just, like, send repairmen and just put it off and be like, we've done what we can, because for some reason they think you're just going to sit there and tolerate them not fixing it. They expect you to be like, oh, well, they're trying their best. And then, you know, the heat has passed and now you don't need it anymore, so they've gotten away with not fixing it. But it's like, that's just postponing the problem, because next year is going to happen and it's still going to be hot and need the AC, you know, working again. Otherwise the complaint is going to happen again. And then if the lease ends and they want to move out, the AC is broken and now no one's going to want to move in because there's no AC. So, like, regardless, they're going to have to fork up that money to fix the AC. Unless they're hoping that your sister forks up the money to pay for it herself, but then she just, like, claims it back. Like, you owe her that money if it's, like, included in the lease and it's the landlord's problem, you know? It's so similar to my last flat that I lived in, but the complete opposite problem, where, like, we were moving in November, so, like, just when winter was about to start, you know, it's the end of autumn, it's moving into winter, and we had signed the lease agreement to start the move, and we were planning on moving like that weekend. And then we got an email being like, oh, by the way, the heating unit is out. And they told us that, you know, it would take a little while for the heater to come in. We'd be without heating for a few weeks, but they provided us with a couple of small electric heaters that were going to absolutely eat into our electricity bill. So they were like, we'd take £20 off your rent for the first month so you can use these heaters since, you know, you don't have the heating. And we were like, okay, that's cool, that's chill, that's fine. We'll move in, thank you for the heaters and giving us £20 off. Mind you, we paid 6 months rent in advance, and they didn't take that off when we paid it, and they didn't take it off when we renewed, but it's fine, whatever. But anyway, we get there, flash forward a full month, winter has now started, and I send an email like, any update on the heating? It's really cold, you know, it's been longer than you said it was gonna be. I was wondering if there's an update, and they replied being like, oh, it's been stuck in transit, you know, it's gonna take another couple weeks to get there. And I'm like, okay, any estimate? And they're like, it shouldn't be too long, maybe a couple weeks. So then another month goes, and now we're in the middle of winter, and I email them again, and they're like, no, it's still stuck in transit. There's nothing we can do about it because we need this specific one and there's nowhere else to get it. And I'm like, okay, fine, I guess that's fine. And it's fucking freezing. We're 10 floors up on the Thames, so the wind is strong, it's cold, it was snowing at some point. It's very, very cold. We're in like a new build. Our entire like lounge, the walls are like glass, so it doesn't retain heat very well, not that there was any to retain anyway. And we get to March, so we're now into spring, and I email them again. I'm like, any update on the heating? It's been a while. Still nothing. Nothing. And then the year we signed for the lease comes to an end in November. And they call us in October, ask if we want to renew. We're like, we want to renew, but just for 4 months because we're planning on going to New Zealand. We don't want to live there when we're away for several months. And they were like, okay, but the landlord wants to increase the rent up by £300. And I was like, we still don't have fucking heating, and you want to charge me an extra £300 to live here? We don't have heating. I'm not paying £300 more. And they came back to me and were like, yeah, okay, fair enough. There, you can keep the rent the same. So at least we got to keep the same price, but the heating was never done. The entire time we were there. We were there for 16 months, and we never had heating the whole time. 2 full winters in London with no heating. And should we have tried to take legal action? Maybe, but apparently they don't have to provide you with heating. That's apparently not like a legal requirement there, which is kind of ridiculous. I'm not very good at kicking up a fuss. I don't want to be a bother. I also don't want people coming into my flat and like having to talk to people all the time. So I just kind of suck it up and deal with it. And I regret that now. I absolutely would not do that now. I don't give a fuck if I'm an inconvenience to my landlord. If shit's going wrong, I'm speaking up and I'm talking about it. Which I have done multiple times in our new flat because I actually like our landlord. He's great. It's like a family home that they couldn't sell, so they rent out. And then they tried to sell it again before we moved in, and they couldn't, so then we moved in. And when like the interest rates went up on the mortgage, they only increased our rent by like £100, whereas a lot of people I know's rent increased by much, much more. And they're very apologetic. We had electricity go out in the whole flat, and they fixed it immediately. We got our entire bathroom wall replaced within the first like 3 weeks we lived there. So he's great. I like him. He's a good landlord. But I would kick up a fuss if I needed to. Anyway, I verged into my own landlord story there. That wasn't the intention. I got really carried away. I just feel for your sister because I've been there. I understand when they just like don't do shit. And I'm very glad that she got someone to send in for like legal help and like make threats, because that's what you should do. And it is what I should have done. And I didn't. And I regret that now. And of course they showed up the next day to threaten legal action, and suddenly it's possible. Suddenly they can do the job they apparently haven't been able to do for all this time. Hi Kiwi, I unfortunately have a very long story for you. And this is broken up into points, so let's go through this point by point. A while back, I moved into a 3-bedroom with 2 friends that was the upstairs floor of a 2-story house. A few months into the lease, we were told by the property manager that the property had been purchased, so we would have a new landlord. Well, hoo boy, did our lives only become terrible from there. I'm going to bullet point things because otherwise there is way too much to make this even somewhat cohesive. One of my now very close friends escaped from an abusive relationship and moved in with us a month or two into the lease. We had started the process of getting them signed on officially, but once the new landlord took over, he refused to add them, even though they had technically lived in the house longer than they had. Okay, so firstly, I'm very glad you were able to do that for your friend. That is such a great thing to do. It's very lovely, and can be, tricky to accommodate for a new person, so it's cool that you were able to give them a space. And that you were in the process of getting them on the lease, which implies that, previously that would have been an option, as they seemed to be accepting of that and allowing them to go through the process to get on the lease. And then the second landlord coming in and rejecting that, it makes no sense to me. Like, that's so baffling to me, because surely an extra person being there means you're more likely to get your money on time. Like, you're more likely to get your money, and there's going to be less likely of an issue with, like, people skipping rent or not being able to afford it, right? Like, surely you'd want an extra person to live there. That's so baffling to me. Like, I'm not allowed to move into my flat by myself on my earnings alone. I could only move in with Kat, and that was a whole process because Kat needed to get, like, her visa renewed while we were trying to move, so she wasn't allowed to move in, so I had to try to move in on my own. I had to get a guarantor, blah, 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 and then when she moved in and signed the lease, now we don't need a guarantor because we make enough money between us to not need that. You know what I mean? Like, surely an extra person makes it easier for the landlord. I don't know why he'd deny you that, other than to make your life annoying and miserable, because it makes it harder for you to meet rent, and also is throwing a person out on the street. I don't know why that's something someone would take pleasure in doing. That's horrible. I'm very sorry. 2, said friend also has an emotional support cat that they had to leave behind and wanted to bring up. Even though we had an agreement with the former landlord that cats were allowed because it wasn't written in the lease, the landlord refused to honor it and we had to hide the cat, despite the landlord bringing a cat of his own when he moved in. What the hypocrisy? If your lease didn't change and you were on that initial lease that let you have a cat, then, like, I feel like, yeah, he's not allowed to take that away from you. If the lease didn't specifically say you weren't allowed pets, didn't even say you have to ask, it just didn't mention pets at all. And then he's like, no, you're not allowed. But you didn't sign a lease with him. That's not what your lease said, right? You didn't have to sign a new lease. So I feel like he can't just take that away from you. But maybe I don't know how it works. But also then bringing a cat of his own. So, like, then why aren't you allowed your cat? Why not? He's obviously chill with cats and knows that they don't cause that much damage. And again, going back to what I said before, if they do cause damage, just cover the damage that they cause. I don't understand. I don't understand why people don't like pets. It's like, they ruin the house. Okay, then charge me and I'll pay to fix it. If I can't control my pet to have them not ruin the house, as you so claim they will, then I'll pay to fix the damages. That's my burden to bear for having a pet and wanting to bring one in. Like, I'm sorry. Just let people have pets, especially emotional support pets. If they are an emotional support pet, is there a process that you can go through to make that, like, a legal thing where you, like, have to be allowed to bring them in? Because I'm pretty sure you can do that in the UK, and I'm very sure you can do it in at least a lot of states of the US. I don't know about anywhere else. But, like, is that an official process you can do? Is that an expensive process to do? Do you have to, like, go and get pets specifically for that? Or can it be any pet? Many questions. Regardless, you shouldn't have to do that. I'm glad you kept the cat anyway and just hid it, though. Good on you. About 4 or 5 months into the lease, the landlord moved into the first floor with his wife. For the most part, they weren't that terrible, but he would sometimes try to enter the apartment without proper notice. At least 24 hours in my state law. Yeah, I think that's usually the rule, right? Like, you have to give 24 hours notice before you come over. Like, you can't just let yourself into people's houses. I don't care if you own it. Like, that's illegal. It's just straight up illegal. You can't fucking do that. I'm so sorry this man just showed up in your flat out of nowhere for no reason. That's horrifying, actually. And his wife was an absolutely nasty person. My friend had to call the police on them twice because one time she started berating and verbally abusing my friend for no reason. And a second time because they decided to paint the downstairs with paint thinner, and instead of opening the windows, they opened up all the vents, blast the air, and pump the paint thinner fumes upstairs. Luckily, my friend realized what was happening and was able to get out before they got too sick. Oh my... That's horrible. Just, like, verbally abusing your friend for seemingly no reason. There's never a reason to verbally abuse someone. Really, actually. Just verbally abusing your friend and then, like, trying to kill you. effectively. Just blasting paint fumes into your apartment. That's so fucked up. That's horrible. Were they, like, trying to get rid of you? Like, I don't know how it works entirely. I feel like it works differently in different places. But, like, it feels like they bought this place and, like, wanted the whole place to themselves and were doing everything in their power to make you leave, because maybe there was something about the lease that you signed that meant new ownership meant they couldn't kick you out. Like, they still had to wait until the end of your lease in order to kick you out. But they wanted you to leave early and then, like, have you pay the fee of, like, breaking the lease. Maybe that's sort of what they were doing. I don't know your situation, but I literally can't think of any reason other than that. I guess maybe just power trip. People are just power hungry and they like the fact that they can abuse people because they can. That's potentially just a reason as well. Point 4. There were 2 parking spots behind the house, one for the downstairs and one for the upstairs. Apparently it didn't actually specify this in the lease, so we were no longer allowed to park behind the house. That's so annoying. And also, love that they're pointing out the lease here, where it benefits them. They're like, it doesn't say in the lease, so we get that. But then when you point out shit in the lease, they're like, no, that doesn't count though. That doesn't matter because I own the place. Like, that's not how this works. Either you honor the lease or you don't honor the lease. If you want both parking spots, then they can have the cat. You know, that's how this works. 5. The laundry machines didn't work in the basement and the landlord put in new ones but refused to let us use them, so we had to go to the laundromat. They're totally just trying to make you leave, right? Or just make your life as miserable as possible. Because, like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Genuinely. 6. And the kicker. The landlord was a chief of staff for one of our state government representatives, one who was championing some really nasty tenant landlord laws. And he personally took advantage of every one of them. My friend was only able to stay with us because of squatting laws, and when those were repealed a few months before the end of our lease, he started making threats and they had to move out, which caused so many more issues. I still flip off that house anytime I drive past it. Absolute trash human. Yeah, that's so fair. I would also flip off that house every time I drive past it. That's so fucked. Of course, he's advocating for some terrible landlord tenant laws. So that almost feels like he wasn't even trying to get you to leave. He just wants to be a terrible person and be on a power trip and take advantage of people and take their money, which is so bad. That's so much worse. That's horrible. It's horrible. I'm so sorry you had to experience that. And I'm so sorry that your friend got kicked out with nowhere to go because of some laws that he probably helped change. It's fucked up. I hope that you were able to move out at the end of the lease and that you found somewhere better, and I hope that your friend is doing better, and I hope that, you know, you have a better landlord now, or better yet, maybe you own a home. I would say very hopefully, and knowing that that's most definitely not the case, because it never fucking is it? My mom was telling me a story about a landlord she had in London back in the 80s. I think that's when she lived in London. She was flatting with her friends and they came home one day to their landlord inside going through all of their personal things. Her landlord just came over while they were out and was just going through all their shit, which is so uncool. So uncool. We have a different lock, so our landlord doesn't even have a key to our flat, which I highly recommend doing. I know a lot of women do that, but I highly recommend doing that if you can. Obviously, in this instance, when you live, like, above them, that could, like, cause a lot of issues because, you know, she already verbally abused you a lot, so I feel like that could lead to more problems. And I think in the lease, a lot of the time it says they have to have a key. A lot of the time they don't find out that they don't, so it's fine. But in this instance, obviously, you would have, it was a whole mess. But I'm very sorry, and I hope that you got out. And I hope that you're doing okay. Landlord is the absolute worst and continuously blamed me for things that can in no way be my fault. The first winter I moved in, my heat broke. They did come and repair it after a month, a repair that I'd come to find out was a tiny band-aid on a much bigger problem. The summer after, I developed a horrible mold problem in the house. We'll attach pictures. It's quite horrible. That's quite horrific, actually. I felt like I couldn't even breathe and did not want me or my dog to get sick. After putting in a work order, she emailed back saying it was my fault because I keep my house at 69 degrees, around 20.5 degrees Celsius. Thank you for including that so I didn't have to Google it. That's like a very reasonable temperature to keep your house as well. They finally sent someone to take a look and went under the crawl space of the house, and things were a complete mess. It was soaking wet underneath the house because a big part of the HVAC was not attached, which if they had investigated during the winter, they would have seen. The mold developed because the intense amount of moisture in the air. The guy who fixed it also told me with an older house that I'd actually benefit from using a very cheap air filter instead of an expensive one because the air gets through easier, which the landlord took as you were using an improper air filter. Basically, fuck landlords. Yeah, that's... oh my god. I know I already said it, but the way that they take their sweet fucking time. They just, like, send someone to not really do anything, and then just, like, be like, yeah, that's it. I don't have to pay for anything. You can deal. Look, I've done all I can. Like, that's not how this works. That's not how this works. And I feel like it's a, you know, massive health and safety issue to be renting out a house covered in mold. And, like, legally, I don't think that should be allowed. I don't know the rules everywhere. I know that they put some pretty intense landlord rules in place in New Zealand because my mom was a landlord and she talks about them. And I know that you can't have mold. You have to have heating. You have to have, like, there's so many regulations now that apparently you have to, you know, fit. Otherwise, you'll get in a fuckload of trouble. But I feel like those don't exist everywhere. And I feel like even when they do, a lot of the time, no one gives a fuck. Like, you know, no one really cares. They're just like, we don't have the time to care about that issue. And the fact that, like, she made it your fault for using the improper air filter, like, how? Something wasn't connected properly that was causing a lot of moisture, and somehow that's your fault? I don't think that's how this works. I don't even think you should be the one having to provide an air filter. I'm so sorry that you had to live in this house that was, like, actually putting you in danger because you had no other choice and your landlord wouldn't do shit to fix it. I will do one final one because I feel like it's worth sharing. This is titled Landlord Fireplace Story. This happened around July to August 2021. I just got off work just down the block from my house, now walking home. As I walked down the street, I noticed that there was a lot of construction equipment and men around our complex. When I glanced over to the apartment, I noticed I could see inside our living room. So I quickly went inside to see a huge hole in what was the fireplace. Picture attached. Yeah, that's a pretty decent-sized hole to just come home to. We had zero notice. No one was even home at the time. Usually landlords have to give you 24 hours notice to even enter your home, let alone make a giant ass hole. This hole was big enough where I, being 5'9", can easily crawl through it. The only thing I was worried about were our two cats. A huge hole in the wall is dangerous for multiple reasons. Obviously, they can get up. They're inside cats with no collars, so this was an issue. Not only that, there's lots of outside cats within our apartment complex that could wander in, and our cats do not like other cats. So to say I panicked would be an understatement. I searched the house for my cats, which thankfully was safe, hiding upstairs. I called my mom about the situation, and she quickly got off work early and came to speak with the construction workers. They ended up covering a hole with thin woods for months, which it was the summer, so it let in a lot of heat. They, including my landlord, never got in trouble or even apologized. I wanted my mom to sue them as they endangered my family, and the no notice is super illegal. But she didn't want to seem sue happy, whatever that means. Oh my god, I'm so baffled by this because, like, why? Why? If they were that desperate in need of going into your flat without your consent to bust a hole in the wall, if they were, like, desperate enough to do that, they surely needed a reason to, right? Like, there had to be something they were desperate to do, that it had to be done right that moment without letting you know. And then they just left it for months with a plank of wood. They didn't even do anything. Like, what did they hammer the hole for? What did they make the hole for? It clearly wasn't urgent because they didn't do shit with it. They just made the hole and left it? Why? Like why? I'm so confused by that. That doesn't make any sense. Firstly, don't go into someone's home without letting them know. That's not legal. Secondly, doing it while you have cats, yeah, absolutely so fucked up, especially if they know you have cats, which I'm assuming they did, and they didn't even, like, care to put them in a room or anything. The cats had to just go hide on their own, I'm presuming anyway, based on how you worded it. And even still, doesn't fucking matter. Why did they put a hole in your wall without your consent? And what was the did they turn it into anything later? Like, please let me know, like, if anything actually, I should reply to the email, actually, but if you're watching, please let me know, what they did with the hole in the end, because I'm really curious to know why it was done in the first place. Obviously, there was absolutely no need for it to be done right then in that moment because nothing came of it for a really long time. But yeah, I'm really sorry that happened. That's fucked up. That's so annoying. That's horrible. You must feel so violated when people just come into your home and, like, literally break holes in your wall. That's... Okay. Well, with that, I think I'm gonna end this video here. We had some good nightmare stories. We got a little bit of a rant out. Let me know if you want a part 2 to this. I do have many more emails to go through that were not included, so I have enough material for another one, so do let me know. And speaking of emails, don't forget, if you have any, please email me a first date story that you may have that you would like me to look at and talk about and discuss, because I think that that'll be a good time. So yeah, email me at dearkiwi@gmail.com and I appreciate it. Alright, so yeah, this was the video. I hope that you enjoyed doing something a little bit different. I really enjoyed this. I'm excited to do more videos like this because I had a very good time. So a massive thank you to my Sprout Number patrons whose names are up on the screen right now, and a huge thank you to my Kiwi Cat patrons: Harry, Bobby, Sparrow, Josh, Mandy, Ikazel, Jessica, Eldo, Danielle, Raven, Anoli Like Cannoli, Elias, Apollo, Taylor is Trying, Boston, Chris, Amelia, and Anu. I love and appreciate you all so much. Thank you so much for joining. If anyone else would like to become a patron, you go to patreon.com/savvycat or click the top link in the description. For as little as £1 a month, you get my videos a day early, as well as podcasts a week early. And then for £3 and up, you get things such as outtakes, bonus mini podcasts, live streams, vlogs, and more. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, TheQueerKiwi, and Twitter, ThatQueerKiwi. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Keep fighting. I love you. Mwah.